Hey, it's Adam. This is Wabi-sabi Podcast. Yes, it's been a month since my last episode with Joe Hollier, co-founder of Light, talking about smartphone addiction and the Light phone as an antidote to that. Thanks so much for bearing with me. Apologies for the gap in time since the last episode. As you know, a lot of life happens. I run this show by myself. And in the last month, I turned 36. I got sick. That feeling, that special birthday feeling of when you have the eyes of the universe gazing upon you is definitely a special feeling. And anyway, all that being said, thanks for listening to the show. If you're new, welcome. I believe this is episode 18 or 19. I should know, but I also like not keeping count specifically. If you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. Hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I do. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show. Leave a review in iTunes or reach out to me on Instagram at wabi-sabi podcast. Last thing to add before we jump into the show, please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/wabi-sabi podcast. Super excited to share this week's guest with you, Jeff Thelin, who hails from the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, which is on the other side of the US of A, especially here in Los Angeles. Jeff is a fellow visual artist I met through the Instagram art community. You could find his work at Teyleen. And Jeff has embarked on an amazing, expansive project, posting a new original design every day for 10 years. It's really amazing, especially if you want to explore the work, if you go back and scroll back into his earlier posts to see the evolution of this work. All the work is done on iPhone using a collection of apps as an ecosystem to really utilize the phone as a canvas. Anyway, I won't go too much into that because you will definitely enjoy the conversation. Check out Jeff on Instagram. You could also support his Patreon as well as mine, patreon.com/Teyleen. That's Teyleen, to help support his journey as an artist and a dad and an amazing human. So without further ado, here's Jeff. Yeah, man. Thank you. Welcome to Wabi-sabi Podcast.
Yeah, thank you. This is actually the first podcast I've ever done. I'm really excited.
How exciting. Yay.
I also watched the intro for the podcast with your son and
with my daughter.
Oh, your daughter. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
My son had long hair, so
yeah. And we can't keep her hair long like at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so cute. I loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm any second now my kettle is going to finish heating up water. Even though today here is going to be like probably almost like 33 or 4 degrees Celsius. It's going to be roasty.
Where are you from?
Well, we're from Los Angeles.
Oh, cool.
But I spend enough time in places like London and the UK where it's like, okay, everybody uses Celsius. I should really start to understand.
Yes, I do agree. I also think the metric system just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was also looking at some of your tea setup, and I'm very, very intrigued and jealous because it looks amazing.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, one of these days, like somehow in person, either we visit. You're in Montreal, correct?
I so badly wish that was true. I I live in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia.
Oh, you're in Virginia.
Yes.
Why did I think you were in Canada?
Well, I spent a few months in Seattle for a little while. It's in Washington, sort of close to our northernly neighbors.
Hmm.
Um, I can become a Canadian if somehow you sensed that. My dad, we realized, well, my grandfather, he was Canadian, born in Canada, and then we figured out with the laws, all of his descendants we can all become Canadian citizens, like
Right.
for
Every
free.
first
Yeah.
generation born out of the country is entitled to one
Yeah.
citizenship.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I understood what you said, but when we looked it up, it was like my dad can become a citizen, and then all my siblings and I can become citizens, and even my
Got it.
son can become a citizen if I
Right,
become
right,
one.
right,
So
right.
maybe one day I will live in Montreal.
Yeah.
I would like that a lot. That sounds better than Virginia.
Have you been? I haven't been there
Oh,
actually. Have you
no.
been there?
Mm-mm. The
No.
closest I've gotten is Niagara Falls. But
Okay. I guess it's close and that's fairly close.
yeah, it's like there's like two sides to Niagara Falls, uh the US side and then the
And the
Canadian.
Canada side.
Yeah. People
Uh-huh.
say the Canada side is a lot better. I don't
I'm sure it is.
know. As with most things in Canada.
Yeah. Wow. So you're okay. So hold that thought for give me 12 seconds
Okay, I
while
can
I
do
fill
it.
up this kettle. I'll be right back. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, I actually got a loose leaf tea kettle not so long ago because I really wanted to get into making loose leaf tea. I just think it looks so relaxing and so lovely. Um, but I couldn't figure out. I got overwhelmed trying to look for tea leaves and stuff, I think, and I haven't been able to
It's a
get into
it's
it.
a yeah, it's a rabbit hole. It's definitely an Alice in Wonderland kind of a universe
Yeah,
to get lost in and to be overwhelmed by, most
right.
importantly, I think. Um, but that's nice. I mean, I think you're almost, I don't know what number specifically is. You're probably like the 17th or 18th
Oh,
guest I've
nice.
had on the show.
Very cool.
So it's still somewhat new. It's still a muscle that I'm getting acquainted with.
Oh,
And,
yes. Mm-hmm.
um,
Well,
but the focus has always been whether we're in person or I'm speaking to someone in in
right.
Virginia
Yeah.
or Montreal or Berlin,
Uh-huh.
um, to have tea as a sort of the vehicle for conversation. I
Yes.
find it to be tea. I think tea is I found to be the quintessential social lubricant.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And I would love to someday be in person drinking tea together. I think that could definitely happen
Yep. Yeah.
because I think probably our life trajectory will take us back out west at some point.
Have you ever um so you said you spent time in Seattle, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we were like there for 3 months and we
Uh-huh.
loved it. It was great.
Uh-huh.
I think we would be much happier there in a lot of ways out west.
Uh-huh.
Just more uh just around people that think like us and
Mhm.
have the same values. It would be nice.
What is your experience of Virginia? So you're in Virginia, not West Virginia, correct?
Yeah, Virginia.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, I was born here and I've lived
Mhm.
here most of my life. Yeah, I've kind of grew up in like sort of the middle of nowhere. We were like 30-minute drive to like anything. So I really grew up like just kind of playing in the woods. and with my brother and sisters, which was great. I have very, very fond memories of growing up, running around in the woods and stuff.
Well, that sounds magical. I mean, growing up like a city kid, I mean, the thought of growing up in the wood or growing up closer to nature, or I'd say
Yeah.
more
Yes.
in touch with nature sounds like the way that I feel like I should be raising my daughter.
Well, it's funny. I feel like the same way with my son, because yeah, we're like now kind of more in like a small town where we went to college. Um, but I don't know, it just feels like so much scarier now when it's like your own kid.
Sure.
But when we go back to visit my parents who live about like an hour and a half from us, we'll like me and my son Riley will like run around in the woods and do the things like I used to do when I was like his age, or actually a little older than him, because he's only 4. But it's really fun because there's like some of the forts I made when I was like 8 are still like out in the woods, and we can find them.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun. It feels really special.
Wow. That's cool because my daughter Cora is also 4. She just turned 4 in July.
Oh, really? Yeah, Riley just turned 4 in mid-August. So yeah,
Wow.
very close.
So we both had quite a 2015.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. It was exciting. We were yeah, my wife and I were actually still in college when we had Riley,
Mm-hmm.
which was quite a roller coaster.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I stayed an extra semester, and yeah, she was I think we had Riley during my wife's like senior year of school.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It was a lot.
Wow. I mean, I've only heard stories of folks, if not getting married, but having kids while they're still at uni.
Yeah, that wasn't really our plan. We always wanted to get married young because my wife and I have known each other since we were like in elementary school.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and then we started dating middle school. She was Rapunzel and I was Rapunzel's prince in the school
Mm-hmm.
play. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now our fate is sealed.
Right.
Not really. We dated, if you can call it dating. Actually, I wasn't even allowed to have a girlfriend. So I like sent her an email and it was like, hypothetically speaking, if I could have a girlfriend, would you be my girlfriend?
Wow.
And that's how we started dating. And then we broke up and we dated each other's best friends and stayed friends. And then we got back together at the end of high school. And then we were like,
Now our fates are sealed.
yeah, we were like, now, yeah, let's be crazy. Let's just get married young and start our life. And that's what we did.
It sounds
It was
so, yeah, it sounds so, I don't want to put it on a pedestal whatsoever,
yeah.
or make it like, but it sounds so like idyllic, in a way.
It was in a lot of ways. We also got married. So my grandparents live right next door to us. In between the two houses, there's like 6 acres of land and like a ton of woods. And my grandma, she couldn't really like move around very well. So we decided, um, so she could see the wedding. We had the wedding in the woods in front of their house, so she could sit on the porch with binoculars and see the wedding. So we had to like clear out the woods, take down a bunch of trees, and like me and my dad made benches for 200 people and like a little arbor. But yeah, it was really nice. And we did it kind of all ourselves. It was very I don't know, very, very meaningful. It was like we did it all kind of ourselves.
Did you watch the movie Big Fish?
I don't actually know if I have seen Big Fish, but I've heard that over and over, the movie over and over. Yeah.
Yeah, this Tim Burton movie. I mean, that what you just described just sounds like a scene out of that, like some like like shaping the world around your collective experience, plus including your grandma, like who has to stay on the porch. Like
Yeah,
it's amazing. It sounds amazing.
it was. It was.
Wow.
Yeah, we were. I think my wife was she might. I think she was 19 and I was 20 because we actually when we went on our honeymoon, we went to like Florida, and my aunt had this timeshare, so we could get like this resort for like only $700, which we were so excited about. We got there at like really late, and they actually wouldn't even let us check in because we weren't old enough. So
Wow.
we had to like call all our families and like get someone who was over 25 to put a card on file in case something happened, so we could go on our honeymoon.
Apparently the world, yeah, the rest of the world is like, we don't believe you if you're under 25,
Yeah,
if you're getting married
yeah,
under 25.
yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm not really an advocate for getting married very young, but it did work out for us. But I think, I don't know, we kind of have a special story because we knew each other for so long.
Yeah. And so you're both experiencing parenthood at, I guess, objectively a young age.
Yeah, yeah. I'm 26. I have a 4-year-old. Yeah.
And your wife is 25, 24,
Yeah,
25.
yeah. She's 25. She'll be
Uh-huh.
26 in October. Um, yes. It's been overwhelming, but of course, very beautiful, meaningful experience. It's hard to not wish that we were like farther along and more established, kind of in our life. But I think in a lot of ways we are very lucky, and we are still giving Riley like a very special childhood because
Yeah.
both my wife and I, we work from home, um, so we get to be there with him, and yeah, I get to be like a big part of his life every day, which is great.
That's yeah, you can't put a price on that.
I don't think, yeah,
No one
I
can.
agree. And I think it so much right now feels very overwhelming uh, in our life, but I think we're gonna look back and like this be some like the best times we've had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I can say from my experience, I'm turning 36 in a few weeks,
nice.
and there was a way in which I maybe a couple of years ago was feeling, even now to a degree, like, oh, I wish I had a better act together,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and or it was a better had a better financial footing
yeah.
in the world, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And but I too, both my partner and I, so we're not married, but I guess according to California, maybe according to the state, we are probably common law married
Nice.
because we've lived together for so long. Um, and we have a child and all these things. And so,
Yeah.
depending on who I'm speaking to, like sometimes I'll refer to her as my partner or my wife.
Right. Like
It's sort of the
right.
same. There's no sort of distinction. I
Yeah.
mean, when I stop and reflect and actually look at it, there are distinctions between wife and partner, clearly. But
Yeah. I don't know. I since we did get married so young, we actually like when we look back on it now, we're like, I don't know that we would have gotten married if we were the people now. Like we would have stayed together and been together forever, but it wouldn't have been quite as important to like have that like ceremony and title as it was to us then. I don't know. Yeah, we're just different people, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I think that's beautiful what you guys are doing as well.
Oh, thank you. Um, uh, but I guess the point of my commenting on what you were saying is even further down, even further down the line, it's like, well, I wish I had, things set up better, or better systems in place. And,
Mm-hmm.
because we're also both freelancers.
Mm-hmm.
My partner's like an educator and body worker and writes, and just is quite a force, in
Yeah.
the universe. And so similarly, to be able to be maybe a little bit thrift with money, and but more sort of like rich with time,
Mm-hmm.
means we get to be um ultra present. I mean, just
Yes.
if you count the hours of the day,
Yeah.
I'm near my daughter as much as humanly possible,
Right.
having, being able to work from home or work close by, that kind of thing, which is, again, you can't put a price on that.
Yeah.
um it's really magical. um I I'm always really interested to touch on a couple of, like, what's your experience of, being a dad, but
Mm-hmm.
also being a creative. I'd love to go into stuff like that
Yeah. I would love
as
to as
well
well.
within this conversation. I feel like I'm, being that this is our very first conversation, and it's also, within the container of this show, and it's like on the record.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious about, like, your origin story. Like,
Mm.
I stumbled onto your work through, the universe of Instagram, and I've used Instagram in a similar way, as a sort of a living gallery, in a way to connect with other digital artists, because, again, I look at your work, and I see a lot of what I was, I think, trying to do like 7 years ago.
Nice.
I found Pixite apps,
Yeah.
amongst other tools, and sort of had this ecosystem of this sort of symphony, like a orchestra of apps that I would use together to create pieces of art, whether it's manipulated photos, or just using, everything, like having a component here and throw it into, using Matter app and Tangent app
Mm-hmm.
and Fragment app, and so on and so forth, and all within iPhone. I know that you work mostly a lot of with iPad as well,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so exciting to see someone, uh, at least what I understand in terms of you, like, really taking that concept and just running with it. Like, you're in the midst of this sort of an era, a dynasty of, like, time, where it's like you're making a piece
Yes.
every single day for.
And it's interesting you say that like that, because that is exactly kind of how it feels like to me. It's like this is like it's like a chapter sort of my story.
Yeah.
For people who aren't familiar with the project, I decided to make a new art piece using just my iPhone for 10 years straight.
10 years straight.
Yeah, which is nuts, which is absolutely wild. Like it does feel scary to me as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess to get to my origin story a little bit, I I've always been interested in like shapes and color. Um, like when I was very little, I had, and I'm lucky enough that I still have some of the drawings I made. But yeah, when I was little, I remember just like taking a little piece of, like, even like a note card, and taking a box of crayons and just like um, making kind of blobs of color on it
Yeah.
until the whole page was filled up, and it was just so relaxing. Um, and there was like a feeling that sort of accompanied that kind of work that I just loved. Um, so that kind of continued on throughout my life in various ways that I wasn't even really, I guess, like that practice, at least I wasn't really conscious of it growing up. But when I look back now, it's kind of like, it's so interesting how that was always there.
Sure.
Because like when I was like little, it was like I was doing it a lot on pages and just having fun, as kids do. And then when I went to school, it slowed down a little bit. But if I look through like a math binder in like of mine from middle school, which I've never been very good at math. I had, I guess I must still have it to some degree, but I struggled with dyslexia growing up. So I was pretty late to learn to read and write, and I almost got like held back in second grade and things like that. So school's been like a little bit of a struggle, but I've always done like pretty well. Anyway, if you look back at this, like a math binder from middle school, it's like filled with geometric designs all on the margins of the pages. Like I was always just doodling, like my natural kind of like brain state. It was just like, it just flowed. It just kind of flowed out of me. And then in high school, I was still doing some of that, but I mean, it really was just like something I did, like doodling. Like I never thought I was an artist, or never really did so many artistic things growing up. I was way more into making movies with my friends. And most of those movies are still up on YouTube to this day, which is a treat. And it's funny because like, since my wife has known me since forever, like that's like the person she fell in love with, like the weird person making these YouTube videos, and they're all still there. So we will go down those rabbit holes and be like, wow, this stuff is crazy. This is so silly.
But to also have it like there, like it's not like in a folder on a computer, it's like on YouTube.
And then my son will watch them now, and it's like, this is why I made these videos. Like, this is like, to see him like think they're funny, it's like, yeah, this is very special. But it wasn't until college that I really started thinking about doing creative things again. I went to college to become an elementary school teacher. And then I think after like my first year of that, someone told me about design, this thing called industrial design, where you get to like make stuff. And I was like, this sounds amazing. I love making things. So I switched into that major, started doing creative things, loving it. And then it was around that time I got my first iPhone. And
Sorry, this is high school or uni? What is it?
This is college now.
College, okay.
Yeah. I think it was like an iPhone 4S. I actually got it because I have such a terrible sense of navigation. Like, I've lived in Virginia my whole life. I know nothing about how to get around Virginia still. I can retain directions. I have no capacity to for navigational retention. So
brought to you by Apple.
Yeah. So my parents were like, we should get you like a smartphone so you can have maps, so you can get around. Like, I think I was trying to get a haircut, and I was like riding my bike, and I like was lost for like 2 hours trying to get there. Anyway, so I got it. And then I realized quickly I was like super excited about the camera. So I started taking a bunch of pictures, having fun with it. And then I guess the natural progression was like, okay, I've taken these pictures. Now how can I edit them? So I started doing like regular things. And then I found like an app to put text over a photo. So I did that. And I think I uploaded it to Instagram, and I got some message that like I was one of the winners for some like contest with a hashtag that I put on the picture. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I had no idea, things like this existed on Instagram. So I kind of got stuck. I kind of went down a rabbit hole of like, what else are people like doing with iPhones? Like I didn't know that, there could have been a contest for like such a thing. And then I started finding that people actually make like art on their iPhones. And there was I don't know when that was actually. What year would that have been? 2000, I guess it was 2011. That's when I think people were really starting to experiment with like interesting things they could make on their phones. and there was this great little community on Instagram of like iPhone only artists that were making all sorts of strange and interesting things. And I fell in love with it all. And I would just like look at people's pictures for hours trying to think, how could they have made this, you know, using their phone? And I downloaded like hundreds of apps. And there were like a few weeks where like pretty much the only thing I was doing in between classes was like figuring out how to make something on my phone.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something that just captured, I guess, intrigued me so much about having a full art studio in my pocket.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a very fast laptop at the time, but I was learning, you know, in school, we were learning how to use the Adobe suite and stuff. So I would have to like, go back to the computer lab every night and to use Photoshop and Illustrator and stuff. And I just started like thinking a lot about like, well, but like this thing I can do in Photoshop. I think I just found like there's an app that I could do something similar with.
Exactly.
And it was like, it is harder and kind of weirder, but it's in my pocket. And there's something that was just so fun about that for me that, I don't know. I've never been able to like shake that bug. It's still so interesting to me. And that's really, I guess, how that curiosity is what got me started with like just the idea of like, what could I make just using my phone? And still a question that I like love to come back to and try to think new ideas with. But I guess the work that I'm doing now, started, I guess, probably like maybe like a year after I got my first iPhone. Like if you go back all the way on Instagram to like the start, I have a lot of like my early stuff there. And it was a little more experimental. And then it kind of morphed into using a picture I took of nature and then overlaying some sort of geometric shape or graphic onto it.
Mm-hmm.
But my son being born was really the impetus that like, I don't know if that's the right word. He was really the thing that kind of pushed me to start doing an everyday project. My son had just been born. Well, not just been. He was born in August. I graduated in December of 2015. And I was really trying to think like, what do I want to do with my life? Who do I want to be? So I did like a few things that I had been thinking about for a while. I became a vegetarian. I'd been thinking about it since like high school. I just was like, okay, I'll do that. I'll become a vegetarian. And then I also decided to start making art every day. And I originally just set out to do it for 1 year. Because I just started realizing I had all of these limiting beliefs about myself and my work. There were like these stories I was telling myself that I think many artists tell themselves. Things like, I can only make art, like good art, like maybe once a week or even once a month, or I kind of have to wait till I have, you know, that inspiration.
A stroke.
Yeah, it's a stroke of genius. And it's like, oh, there it is. Now I can like quickly get to, you know, my work and make something good. But I guess I wasn't really satisfied with where I was and what I was doing with my work. And I also didn't like those ideas that I like recognized I had about myself. So I decided maybe a good way to challenge that would be just to try to make something every day for a year, even if it's all bad. And then just to see, and also just to see like, how much do I really care about this art? Do I like, would I love it if I had to do it every day? Things like that. And it turned out to be a huge success and really one of the best things I think I've ever done.
Is it every day for a year?
Yes. Yeah. Starting that project. Because I learned so much. And I think, at the beginning I was very, very scared, very nervous, didn't think I'd be able to make anything good. And I hadn't really like set up kind of like the rules for myself that I have now. But because I like in the beginning, like I remember day one, I was like, okay, I'm gonna like make like 5 of these just in case like I can't come up with something one day, so like I'll have something in storage. But that but that actually like didn't really end up working out. I wasn't happy with that because then like when I went to I guess post some of those ones, it felt like I was cheating. It didn't really felt I didn't feel that pressure, you know, to like come up with something and make with something because I already had done it. So I realized if I want this project to work, the goal is to not post something, you know, on Instagram every single day. That's just how that's the vehicle. The objective is to make something I'm proud of every day. That's the practice. That's the goal. And you know, the sharing it with people, that's just the last step. So I decided to really, you know, turn it into a daily practice that I had to figure out how to do. And I think that's really where the growth happened. Because the amount of time it takes me to make designs was interesting in the beginning. Like some of those first ones like took me, you know, 5 hours, and then the time got shorter.
And you started bending time.
Yeah, exactly. And then I started gaining confidence. It was funny in that first year. It was like every single day was a surprise. It was like if I made something I was really happy with, it would be like, okay, there's absolutely no way I could do this again tomorrow or maybe ever again. Like this one was so good. I'm really happy with it, but I have no confidence that like tomorrow I'm gonna wake up.
Isn't it the weirdest? It's the weirdest experience of making, and it's funny to hear. And I don't want to. Sorry, you know what? I don't want to interrupt the flow of the story. I'm going to save this because I want to hear the rest. But like, there's so much that I relate to.
Yeah, and I'm saying that's why I like to tell the story or say things like this, like as honestly as I can, because I think most people who are making anything feel like this, and really what making stuff every day has done for me is like it just has helped quiet those insecurities and fears, because I definitely still feel them, like even now. So the story continues. I got to day 365. I had started to gain like a little bit of interest around what I was doing from other people in the iPhone art community and other artists and people on Instagram and things. And people were like, what are you going to do? You know, what's happening? So I decided I was getting a little comfortable with making art every day. I'd done it for a year. But and I thought back to the start of the project, and what really like kind of helped me, I guess, take a leap in my work and gain a little confidence was doing something that really freaked me out, saying, I'm going to do it, you know, make something every day for a year. So I thought, what would be something I could do that might scare me again, but also give me focus like this project did. So I basically just decided I was thinking about just going, you know, saying I'll do it for another year, but I decided probably something more interesting to follow along with, and also a bigger challenge to myself would just say, I'm continuing the project. I'm committing to doing 1,000 days in a row.
So about 3 years.
Yeah. So I started that, and then I just kept going at day 365. To day 1,000. And I think that section from 365 to day 1,000 was super hard. There's so many things happened like in life as well, because we both graduated college. We moved closer to DC. We moved in with my wife's grandparents, where we lived for 2 years. I had, I think like 3 different jobs doing like video work, movie editing, and graphic design for a few companies, and they all turned out to be, they were all like very small companies, but they all were like terrible. The people I was working with like were all interesting, and it was, yeah, it just like wasn't a nice, none of those experiences were very easy. And then I quit one of those jobs and moved out west for an apprenticeship opportunity with the company Moment, which was a grand adventure, but also absolutely crazy because I'm actually trying to stop saying that word. It was absolutely wild. We just moved to Seattle with like one suitcase and a baby. And we got 1 month like lease on an apartment, a studio apartment in downtown Seattle that we found on Facebook. Some guy had moved out of his studio, and we basically just like got off the plane, got on a train, went to this place downtown, met the guy outside for the first time, Venmoed him $1,600, and he was like, "Okay, here's your key. You can stay here for a month." And then we emptied our suitcase and walked like a mile to Target and filled it with like an air mattress, 2 plates, and like a knife. I mean, not a knife, like 2 forks and, you know, some cutlery. And bought like some sheets. And then we went back to the studio, like inflated our air mattress and like made spaghetti or something, because we got there and we realized like, oh, like we literally have nothing. Like we don't have anything we can cook anything in. We don't have anything to eat with. We don't have any blankets. We have nothing. So that was very, very interesting experience. So, but yeah, throughout all of that, still making a piece of art every day. It's kind of been, it's been kind of like the thing that grounds me. It's like whatever else is happening, I'm going to make this, and I don't know, it provides like a cadence to my days that I have found very comforting.
It's a simultaneous, it's like a meditation, a sort of get out of my comfort zone exercise. Mm-hmm. As you say, it's a cadence. It's something to either look forward to or to like, or maybe begrudge that day. Oh, I gotta do this for 10 minutes, whatever it is, whatever the story is.
Yeah.
It's amazing to hear, as I've seen the work. I may have not have seen every single day, but I've followed you for, I feel like for years, not
probably
for a longer time. And it's amazing to hear the backstory, like what was going on while this was happening. Because I mean, in the theme of wabi-sabi, and I'm no expert on wabi-sabi or like, you know, Japanese worldviews or aesthetics.
What does wabi-sabi mean? I actually don't know.
What does wabi-sabi mean? So as a tangent, wabi-sabi is a Japanese worldview and aesthetic. It's an aesthetic worldview of seeing things and embracing like imperfection, impermanence. You know, like
love that.
Like if you put like a piece of like a burl slab live edge piece of wood with all of its wood grain or weird just what makes a piece of wood next to like a MacBook. You know what I mean? Like the MacBook is sleek, it's precise, it's geometric, there's no perceivable flaw, right? But you can love both things for different reasons. I love the piece of wood, right? So
yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
There's so many like metaphors that are firing off in my head with what you're explaining, like your guys' moving to Seattle with a baby and like getting off the plane, Venmoing the guy, like that in itself sounds like a work of art. Like,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, not to like quantify it as like, well, that, you know, that was just that,
mm-hmm.
but just to sort of trying to kind of draw these parallels,
Yeah,
that you went through these experiences while you're also doing this daily task.
yeah.
It's like,
It's
it's mind-blowing.
I will also say that none of this would be possible if I was doing it on
Of course.
using any other medium. Because there's some heroes of mine, like Beeple Crap, who's been making new like art using I don't know, whatever the 3D software is, like Cinema.
Cinema
Yeah,
4D and all kinds of,
like he's been making those I think he's at like 12 years now straight.
yeah,
And like he has to use like a laptop at the very least.
yeah,
And like I've heard stories from him where like his like baby is being born and he's like still trying to make design on his laptop and stuff, which is like,
yeah,
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing if I was using my laptop, just like the type of person I am and like the way my life feels.
yeah,
Like a lot of my designs, especially before day 1000, were very much in the cracks of my day.
yeah,
And some of those are actually, I think, I'm like most happy with, because it's also interesting. It feels like I've made so many designs, and like I forget them a little bit, but when I see one, it's like a weird time marker in my life. Like it will take me back to a moment, or it will at least take me back to how I was feeling at that time. I'd be like, oh wow, I remember this one. This one was really tough for me, and like I was really insecure about this. Or it was like, oh, I was on the bus when I was making that.
yeah,
But yeah, it used to be very much kind of in like the found time of my day, when I was like, sometimes when I was walking to class in college, or
totally.
yeah, just waiting for things.
Yeah, waiting in a queue somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
or sitting in a coffee shop or something.
Yeah, and I think that helped me also become very like inspired by just using my iPhone, because there would be these like lovely moments where I would be on the bus and I would see like a ray of light coming through the window, and I'd just like take out my phone, take a picture of it, and then I'm in a totally different world. Put my headphones in. Now I'm making art with this picture, this little moment I saw on the bus. You don't have to wait till you get home. You don't have to wait for anything. You have an idea and bam, you're doing,
That's what I loved about it. Same thing. And I feel like, looking back, I could say that my favorite time periods or favorite pieces that I made, or like the flow state
yes,
that I found myself in,
mm-hmm.
or using like an iPhone 4S or a 5.
Absolutely.
Forget about and I'm using a 10R right now.
Nice. Yeah.
And I have, I don't know, I'm finding myself like less oriented, or less or more distracted to like do other shit.
Yes.
Than just to kind of be inspired in that moment.
I really miss the form factor of like the iPhone 5, 5S, the SE. I think that was the perfect.
Yeah.
And I actually have a few other iPhone only artist friends who like think the same thing. Like it's weird. It's weird that people like us, who are doing like, I don't know, very kind of, I guess, like extreme things on an iPhone, wouldn't want like the biggest thing. But I think if you're someone who is like excited about the idea of using a phone to do creative work, you're excited because like you can do it anywhere, or even with one hand. And like, it's getting harder to do that with, the bigger phones.
What I realized, what was exciting about it was the perceived imperfections, the limiting form factor, the limiting kind of,
I think exactly,
pixel rate,
Yes, those constraints, which have also been a huge theme in the work I've done, just constraints in general. I think they're so helpful with especially creative work. And yeah, having that smaller screen, there's also like an attitude about it that I think I always felt like, maybe you just said this word as well, but I always kind of felt like, you know, some kind of renegade, or like a lot of the apps that I was using, they weren't even like exclusively for art. So I always kind of felt like I was like hacking things and like,
yeah,
just like finding weird workarounds, and like somehow like just doing it on such an absurdly small thing like made it even more fun. But like, yeah, now it feels like, yeah, like this is like doable. Like this seems like an appropriate thing, you know, you
yeah,
could do on this device. Maybe
yeah.
that's part of
Have
it as well.
Have you ever? I guess I had just assumed this, but I wanted to make sure I asked you in this conversation. Have you ever displayed your work, like in a gallery or in an installation?
Yeah, I have. I've done a few. I think mostly in Harrisonburg, which is like the town I'm from in the Shenandoah Valley.
Mhm.
I've done like 3 shows here. I did one really cool one before, it was like before day 1,000, but I had over like 100 of my pieces on display at the same time, and
Wow,
that was when I was using a smaller phone, because like the statement was like, it was actually the first time I had ever seen any of like my designs, uh,
printed.
yeah, and not in like a 2 inch by 2 inch square. I had
Exactly.
them all blown up to like, I think I had 100 at 4 inches by 4 inches, and then I had like a few that I really liked that were at like 10 inches.
Uh-huh.
And it was, yeah, it was an amazing experience. And I think I would really like to do more things like that. I think it would be really fun to see all of my work kind of at once, and have some kind of a thing that you could walk through and kind of like see how it's changed and also like stayed the same.
Kind of like a retrospective or something.
Yeah. Like even if I could do something like that just for me and nobody, you know,
Yeah,
came, it would be
yeah,
lovely. I would still love it.
yeah. Wow, I mean, God, having like 100 pieces or more at once. I've had installations of like maybe 6 to 15 pieces,
Yeah.
and I've made some like if I found a way to hack an image to get like a PNG, like to output in like
Hmm.
PNG and have like a higher pixel rate, I could blow one up to like, I don't know, maybe 16 by 24.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, but most pieces were like about a foot, maybe 12-inch
Right.
square,
Hmm.
8-inch square.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of those, like the earliest designs I've made, since I was making them on like a iPhone 5, the like they're only like 800 pixels by 800 pixels or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like now I set most everything at like 4,000 pixels by 4,000 pixels. And
Yeah.
I think that's actually not even like an appropriate file size to upload to Instagram, but I don't know, it's too hard for me to try to optimize it for Instagram. I just don't care enough, which is terrible.
Yeah. They're gonna squash. Well, they're gonna squash it anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
they compress it down to I don't want to say garbage because it's still beautiful to see,
But yeah, I agree with
but
you. Yeah, they do compress it. Yeah, but uh it's like the designs I make now are actually, I'm getting into a much better cadence, I think, post day 1,000, with like making it a more kind of like meaningful, like sit down, dedicate some time to this, rather than
yeah,
like coming back to
squeeze
it.
it into the
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. It's I've like kind of, I guess I'm realizing, hey, like this is actually like a really important part of my life, and it's like one of my favorite things I do. Like I can, kind of treat it like that, um, as like a gift I'm giving myself. That's also been one of the like the best things I think I've done, is when I was talking about like those stories I was telling myself in the beginning about how insecure I was about my work. Um, yeah, the theme of stories has been huge in this project, and just realizing kind of like that all that stuff is kind of just in our heads.
Yeah.
And if you're an artist, creative person, I think there are lots of things in our heads. And I just started telling myself kind of like a mantra, I guess, maybe before day 1,000, that the reason I'm doing this work is like, it's for me. I make these designs because they help me, feel like me. They help me feel less anxious, and that they like maybe heal me in some way. And like, I didn't even really, like, I guess, believe that story at first, but I didn't like the story, I was telling myself before, which was, I can't do this. Maybe I should stop this. Maybe this doesn't, maybe this art's no good, stuff like that. So I just started, every time I would hear myself saying those things, I would think like, no, that those aren't the thoughts I'm going to think. Actually, instead, remember, this art helps you. This art heals you. This art, helps so much. And it's really it was hard to, I don't know, do that at first, but now, like, I believe that. I've told that story to myself enough times that I believe it, which I think is the important part. Whether it's actually true or not, I believe it now, so it's true. Makes sense.
It's so great to hear it again, like coming from someone else. I feel like at this point, like people like us, we can almost create like a theorem or some kind of something to prove, like, yes, these devices, based on their design and the kind of content that's being fed, through the tube, so to speak, can be detrimental to people's brain patterns, attention, awareness, so on and so forth. Yet, we've found with these tools, with these platforms, with this ecosystem of apps, that there are amazing human and human and tech experiences to be had in a form of entrainment, right? And like sort of creating a flow state, having it be visually oriented. Like, I wonder if we could. I don't know what I'm getting at here, but like, I feel like I'm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think I do know what you're saying. It's like the idea of like iPhone being addicted to your smartphones is something I think about a lot. Where it's just like, that is because like in some ways I'm like, yeah, like I guess I am, sure, in some way, if you like want to think about it like that. But I guess, yeah, it's interesting to think about the breadth of experiences you can have with something like your smartphone, where it's like people who use them all the time, there's like a narrative that like those people are like addicted to social media, and other sorts of things that maybe we shouldn't be spending so much time on. Yeah, but it's interesting to think about, like, well, actually, I don't actually do that many of those things on my phone. What I do on my phone all day is make art. Um, it's just like an interesting way to challenge those ideas.
I may have just lost you. Well, that's really interesting, because I was going to mention this thought or finish this thought and then say that I'd like to continue this conversation in a part 2, because I actually have to leave to go pick up my daughter from preschool. But I wanted to take this moment to thank Jeff. He's probably off this call right now due to technical glitchery. But thank you, Jeff, for taking the time to dive into origin story and the love for this hotly contested technology. Trying to be creative, not even trying, the ability to be creative with mobile devices and to share that creativity and to have it be an ongoing conversation is really magical. And it's very much like in the here and now, objectively speaking, at this time of existence. So check out Jeff on Instagram at Teyleen, Teyleen, and check him out on Patreon as well. You can find the Patreon information to support his work as he goes to, what did he say? Maybe 3,000 days of creating a piece of art every single day. So check him out on Instagram, find the information for Patreon, and thanks for listening.